23 years after my husband held our daughter 6 minutes after she was born, I gave her father-daughter dance to my ex, a man who had never packed one lunch or waited outside one emergency room. I told Peter he had already received the aisle and 23 years of being dad, while Adrian, the man I still believed I should have chosen, deserved 4 minutes to feel what fatherhood might have been. When Peter stepped toward the dance floor, I caught him by the ear in front of 160 guests and ordered him to get out of my sight. Leah looked at him as if he were the one ruining her wedding and told him not to make the moment about himself. Peter only tapped 4 slow beats against his leg and stepped back. I thought I had finally put every man in his proper place. Then Adrian said what I had told him about the father he could have been. Leah tore her hand away, and the bride ordered the DJ to stop the music. My name is Harriet Lawson. I was 44 that summer, and I directed donor events for a private university outside Boston. My job was to keep important rooms clean. Not physically clean, emotionally clean. I knew which speech had to be shortened, which angry guest needed a better seat, and which name should be moved higher on a program so a person with money felt remembered. Peter used to say I could turn panic into a schedule. He meant it as praise. Later, I heard it as proof that he only valued me when I was useful. On our first anniversary, before we could afford a real trip, Peter took me into an empty school gym he was inspecting after hours. I had refused to dance at our wedding reception because I was afraid of looking foolish. He placed my hand on his shoulder, counted 4 beats, and moved slowly until I stopped staring at my feet. There were no flowers, no guests, and no camera. I loved him for making a private moment feel safe. Years later, safety began to feel like the only thing he knew how to offer. He was 46 and supervised a municipal bridge inspection crew. Steel, concrete, load limits, corrosion. Peter trusted what could be measured. If a beam was weak, he marked it. If a bolt was loose, he replaced it. If his wife said she was lonely, he checked the calendar and asked which evening she wanted to go out. That was his flaw. A real one. But Peter had not been a careless father. I will not lie about that, even if I lied about other things. When Leah was born, he held her before I did, because the nurses were still working around my bed. He counted 4 slow beats against the blanket until her crying softened. At 5, she stood on his brown work shoes while he taught her the same 4-count step in our living room. At 13, he slept upright beside her hospital bed during an asthma attack. At 16, he sat in the passenger seat while she cried after failing her road test, then took her back the next Saturday without telling anyone she had been afraid. Peter did not miss the hard parts. He only made them look ordinary. That was the problem, at least in the story I told myself. Adrian Costa made ordinary things look bright. He had been my boyfriend during my first 2 years of college, before Peter, before the mortgage, before I learnt to discuss romance beside a basket of unfolded laundry. Adrian hosted a regional radio show and emceed half the university galas I planned. He could walk into a silent ballroom and make people lean toward him. He had stayed in our wider circle. He came to summer barbecues hosted by old college friends. He sent Leah a graduation card and once attended a dance recital because I had extra tickets. He knew her favorite color when she was 12. He knew she studied environmental design. He knew the name of the man she was marrying. He had never been her father, not for one day. Leah was 23 when she married Ethan Brooks. She chose an old railway depot that had been turned into a reception hall. The brick walls were warm, the windows were tall, and the original station clock still hung above the dance floor. I loved the place because every part of it could be directed. Guests entered through one arch. Vendors used a black curtained passage behind the DJ booth. The wedding party waited in a room that had once sold tickets. 6 weeks before the wedding, Leah sat with us at the long oak table in the venue office and wrote the final order on an ivory card. Ceremony at 5. Dinner at 7. First dance at 8:30. Father-daughter dance at 8:45. Beside that line, she wrote Dad, no freestyling. Peter read it twice. Then his thumb tapped 4 slow beats against his thigh. I knew the habit. He did it before difficult inspections and during arguments when he wanted to stay calm. I saw a man managing nerves because he had no better way to speak. Leah saw it too and smiled. She reminded him that her left ankle still hurt if he turned her too fast. Peter said he remembered. He had already asked the band for the slower version of the song, the one they used when she was little. Of course, he remembered the speed. Peter remembered instructions. What he did not remember was how often a woman needed to hear that he wanted her, not only that he had planned for her. 10 years earlier, I had been offered a 6-month events program in New York. It was the largest chance of my career. Peter responded with school schedules, mortgage numbers, and Leah's anxiety about changing routines. Every fact he gave me was true. Not one sentence said he was proud of me. Not one sentence said he was afraid I would discover a larger life and never come back. I turned the program down. He thanked me for being practical. Adrian heard about it at an alumni dinner 2 months later. He said the university had been foolish not to build a way for me to go. Then he said New York would have understood me. That sentence lived in me for 10 years. Peter did not become cruel after I stayed. He became grateful in the most practical way possible. He took over mornings when my events ran late. He learned which dry cleaner could rescue beaded fabric. He brought food to my office during commencement week and never once complained when a donor called during dinner. But he never returned to the decision itself. When I was promoted 3 years later, he missed the small celebration because a truck had struck a support beam. He arrived home at midnight with supermarket flowers and a printed article about my new role. I wanted him in the room when my name was announced. He thought bringing proof that he had read about it was the same thing. Adrian was in that room. He stood first when my promotion was announced and made everyone else stand with him. Peter gave me flowers after the chairs were empty. Neither act told the whole truth about either man, but I repeated the comparison until it did. At the venue office, Leah slipped the ivory card into Peter's hand and told him to practice. He folded it once and put it inside his wallet. I asked whether one dance truly needed 6 weeks of preparation. Leah said it mattered to her. Peter did not answer. 4 taps. Slow and even. I decided his silence meant he knew the dance would look awkward. I also decided I could improve it. Those were 2 decisions, and I treated them like one harmless thought. Celia, my younger sister, helped the thought grow. She had been married twice and left both times before anyone could leave her. She believed bright choices were always more honest than patient ones. When I told her Adrian was coming to the wedding alone, she said it would be strange to ignore a man who had known our family for so long. I said the day belonged to Leah, not my past. Celia asked whether that had ever stopped me from making a room better. I laughed. It was a small laugh. Private. Safe. The next week, Adrian hosted a university dinner for scholarship donors. He wore a dark blue suit and remembered the names of 3 guests he had met once. Peter arrived late from a bridge closure, still carrying a pale line of dust at one cuff. He kissed my cheek, asked whether the caterer had fixed the coffee service, and took the seat beside me. Adrian came over before the first speech. He congratulated me on Leah's wedding and asked whether she still danced. Peter said she had stopped lessons in high school but still counted from her left foot when nervous. Adrian smiled as if that detail was charming. Peter said it because it was true. I heard competition in it. During dinner, Adrian told Leah stories about my college years. He described me climbing onto a campus fountain at midnight after our radio fundraiser reached its goal. Leah laughed and said she had never seen that side of me. Peter ate quietly while I became 20 again at the table. I asked Leah whether her father had ever told her how we almost did not date because he cancelled our second dinner for a bridge emergency. Peter corrected me. He said it was not a bridge emergency then. It was a flooded underpass, and he had called from a payphone. Details. Always details. Adrian said a man should know when a woman needed to come before concrete. Leah looked at Peter. I watched the look and let it stand. That evening, in the parking garage, Peter asked why I kept using Adrian to explain what was missing between us. His voice was soft, but the question was exact. He named the dinner, the fountain story, and the way I had watched Leah after Adrian's comment. I told him he was reading jealousy into a pleasant night. He asked whether I had told Leah he did not care about the dance song. I had. 2 days earlier, Leah had worried that the song might be too sentimental for him. I told her Peter considered public emotion a performance and would probably prefer something shorter. He had never said those words. They sounded like him, so I decided that was close enough. Peter said I had answered for him again. I reminded him that he had spent years leaving answers to me. He had stayed silent when Leah asked why I turned down New York. He had stayed silent when she thought he disliked Ethan. He had stayed silent whenever a conversation became messy and then acted surprised when I cleaned it. He did not deny that. His thumb moved against his leg. 1, 2, 3, 4. He said he should have told Leah himself that he worried Ethan changed jobs too often. He should have told me that New York scared him because he was afraid of losing me. Then he said fear was not permission to speak through him. For a second, I wanted him to say more. He had finally named the fear I had waited 10 years to hear, but he named it in a parking garage under a flickering light, after Adrian had already reminded me what being admired sounded like. I told Peter he was late. That answer hurt him. I saw it in the way his fingers stopped. He opened the car door for me anyway. At home, Leah and Peter practiced in the living room. I stood on the stairs where they could not see me. Peter counted 4 beats. Leah stepped left, brought her feet together, stepped right, and laughed when he forgot the turn. She placed one foot on top of his brown shoe like she had at 5. For a few seconds, both of them looked younger. Then Leah asked whether he had wanted her to choose a different song. Peter said no. He told her he had requested the slower recording because of her ankle. She asked why I had said otherwise. Peter did not answer for me. He only told her she should ask me. I walked downstairs before she could. I said I had misunderstood a casual comment and that nobody needed to turn a song into a family meeting. Leah accepted that because the wedding had already given her too many problems to solve. The next evening, Leah asked Peter why he had been cold toward Ethan during the first year they dated. I stayed in the doorway while Peter answered. He admitted that Ethan's changing jobs had frightened him. He said he had treated questions like inspections, looking for weak points instead of learning who Ethan was. Leah told him that his questions had made her feel as if he did not trust her judgment. Peter did not defend the questions. He said she was right about the effect, even if she was wrong about the reason. Then he told her he respected the life she and Ethan were building. Leah's shoulders softened. It was not forgiveness. It was one clean answer after years of me carrying messages between them. I stepped into the room and reminded Peter that honesty became easier when someone else had already managed the damage. Leah asked me not to turn the conversation into another contest. That stung because competition was the word Peter used, not hers. I told myself he had finally taught her to see me as the problem. Peter folded the ivory card and returned it to his wallet. 4 taps followed. I called that sulking. It was easier. 3 days later, Celia and I met Adrian for lunch near the university studio. I told him Leah wanted to include people who had shaped our family, and that one special dance might be a beautiful surprise. Adrian asked whether I meant to dance with him. I said perhaps only the second verse, something symbolic, a way to honor the life around her, not only biology. He asked whether Peter knew. Celia said Peter had never enjoyed attention. I said he would be relieved once he saw how well the moment worked. Adrian turned his glass between his fingers. He liked the idea. I could see that. He liked cameras, applause, and rooms that knew his name. Still, he asked one more time whether Leah wanted him there. I told him she did. That was my first clean lie. The rehearsal dinner took place in a family restaurant beside the river. Ethan's parents had booked a back room with blue napkins and narrow windows. Peter sat beside Leah. Adrian sat beside me because I had changed one place card after the staff finished setting the tables. Nobody complained. That mattered to me. When it was time for family remarks, I stood with my glass and thanked the people who had helped Leah become confident. I spoke about Celia teaching her to laugh at mistakes. I spoke about Ethan giving her room to take risks. Then I thanked Adrian for reminding our family that life could be larger than schedules and safe choices. I said some people paid bills and drove the car, while others taught a young woman not to be afraid of wanting more. The room went quiet in patches. Peter looked at Leah, not me. His thumb pressed 4 beats against the tablecloth. He did not defend the hospital nights or the Saturday road test. He did not mention the smaller work schedule he had accepted after she was born so I could return to events. He simply asked Leah whether she still wanted to dance with him the next evening. Leah looked embarrassed by the question. She said yes, of course, but added that he should not make the dance feel like a test of loyalty. Peter said it was not a test. He took the ivory card from his wallet, smoothed it once, and set it beside his plate. I saw a man holding tightly to the last ceremony he could claim. I did not see a father making sure his daughter still had a choice. Adrian raised his glass and told Leah she had room in her life for more than one kind of influence. People smiled because that sounded generous. Celia laughed, but her laugh ended early. After dinner, Ethan found me near the coat rack. He asked what I had meant about people who only paid bills. I said every family made jokes about its practical person. He said Leah did not look amused. I told him wedding nerves made everyone serious. Peter waited by the exit with the ivory card back in his wallet. When I reached him, he asked whether I planned to put Adrian into the dance. I asked why he assumed every kind gesture was an attack. He said he was not assuming. He was asking before the wedding gave us no private place left to answer. I told him Adrian might receive 1 verse. I called it gratitude. Peter said Leah had not asked for that. I said Leah should learn that love was not a limited seat. He answered that I could honor anyone I chose, but I could not give away his place and call his pain insecurity. That sentence was strong enough to stop me. It almost did. On the drive home, Peter kept both hands on the wheel. The river flashed between the buildings, black under the streetlights. He said the worst part of the dinner was not my comparison to Adrian. It was watching Leah search his face as if she no longer trusted her own memories of him. He said he had helped create that confusion. Every time I gave Leah an explanation for his silence, he had accepted the easier path and waited for his actions to correct it later. Actions did not answer questions. He understood that now. There was no anger in his voice, only sadness. For 1 exit, maybe 2, I considered telling him the whole dance idea and letting it end there. Then he asked whether I could promise not to change Leah's plan. The question sounded like supervision. I told him marriage was not an inspection site and I was not one of his damaged bridges. He said nothing else. 4 taps touched the steering wheel at the next red light. By the time we reached home, I had turned his sadness into another attempt to control the room. Then Adrian stepped into the hallway, laughing with 2 old friends, and put his hand lightly at my back as he passed. Peter saw it. His mouth tightened, but he said nothing. I heard no claim, no fight, no fear of losing me. I decided the dance needed to happen. The morning of the wedding, our house filled before 8. Garment bags hung from door frames. Makeup cases covered the dining table. Celia carried shoes upstairs while Leah's maid of honor searched for a missing earring. Peter stayed in the garage for most of it, pressing his dark suit and polishing the same brown shoes Leah had once stood on. I found that sentimental. Sentiment was easy for him when it did not require a conversation. Leah went into the garage before Mrs. Alvarez arrived. Through the open door, I saw her hand Peter a small box. Inside were plain silver cufflinks engraved with Father of the Bride. Peter ran his thumb over the words and looked away from her for a second. Leah told him not to get emotional before makeup was finished. He smiled and promised nothing. Then he gave her a flat package wrapped in blue paper. It held the road atlas they had used when he taught her to drive, now filled with notes beside the towns she and Ethan planned to visit. There was no expensive surprise inside. No key. No check. Just years of small handwriting and the first route she had ever driven without stalling. Leah hugged him. I watched from the doorway until she saw me, then asked whether anyone had checked the florist's arrival time. The hug ended because I gave the room a task. Mrs. Alvarez arrived just before noon. Leah had invited her without telling me. She had taught Leah dance from age 6 to 15 and still wore her silver hair in the same tight knot. She saw Peter's shoes and laughed. She told Leah that her father had spent 9 years sitting on the hard bench outside the studio. She remembered him counting 4 beats through the wall whenever Leah became nervous before a performance. Leah said I had told her Peter usually worked during those lessons. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me. She said he missed some, but not many. When he did, he called before class and arrived before the last student left. It was one small correction. Leah treated it like a loose thread. She asked about the winter recital when she was 12. I had said Peter chose an inspection dinner over it. Peter explained that he arrived after the first number because an ice crack closed a bridge. Mrs. Alvarez remembered him, standing in the rear aisle before Leah's solo. Leah looked from him to me. I said memory was never perfect after 11 years. Of course, Mrs. Alvarez remembered the romantic version. Teachers liked devoted fathers because fathers were not the ones arguing over costumes, fees, and homework at midnight. Mrs. Alvarez did not argue. She went upstairs to help with the dress. In the hallway, Leah stopped with one hand against the wall. The noise had become too much. Her fingers tapped 4 quick beats against the wallpaper. Peter stood at the other end of the hall. He did not approach. He pressed his hand to his thigh and answered with 4 slower taps. Leah breathed with him. The space between them held a language built over years. For 1 second, I saw it clearly. Peter had not been absent. He had been present in a way that did not need me to announce it. Then Leah smiled at him instead of me. I told myself he had passed his anxiety into her and called that connection. Adrian made rooms lighter. Peter taught people how to endure heavy ones. A bride deserved light. At the depot, the ceremony began at 5. Peter walked Leah down the aisle beneath the old station clock. She held his arm with both hands. Halfway to Ethan, she whispered something. Peter smiled and tapped 4 beats against her wrist. I watched from the front row. The guests saw a father steadying his daughter. I saw Peter receiving the largest public role of the day without ever asking what I needed. When the officiant asked who supported the marriage, Peter answered for both of us after one glance in my direction. The room heard his voice. It was warm, certain, not weak at all. That made my plan feel more necessary. During photographs, I used my vendor access to open the reception schedule. Leah had named me the family contact because I worked in events. At 7:58, I changed one line. Father-daughter dance, Peter Lawson became father-daughter dance, Adrian Costa. Then I sent the DJ a note saying the bride had approved a surprise. I told myself it was not theft. Peter had the aisle. He had the answer at the ceremony. He had 23 years. Adrian would receive one song, 3 minutes, 42 seconds. That was all. I found Adrian at the bar. 2 glasses of red wine had warmed his face and loosened his smile. I told him the cue was set. He asked whether Leah knew he was taking the full dance. I said she wanted a symbolic moment and would understand once the music began. He hesitated. Then a photographer called his name, and hesitation turned into a grin. Celia heard enough to understand. She pulled me behind the black curtain near the DJ booth and asked me to change it back. She said Peter had received no warning and Leah had not agreed to the words father-daughter. I reminded her that she had called the idea brave. She said brave was not the same as using a bride as a stage. I told her not to become moral after helping me reach the door. She stepped away. When I looked for her 20 minutes later, her chair was empty and her handbag was gone. At 8:35, I told Leah that Peter had asked to give Adrian the dance. I said the rehearsal dinner had made him uncomfortable and he did not want people watching him struggle through the song. Leah stared at me. She asked why he had practiced for 6 weeks. I said practice had shown him his limits. Then I said Adrian wanted one chance to honor her, and refusing him in front of everyone would make the evening ugly. Ethan came toward us, but I sent him to speak with the caterer about the cake knife. Leah asked whether she could talk to Peter first. The DJ announced that the special dance would begin in 2 minutes. I told her there was no time. Peter found us beside the black curtain. He had learned about the change from the band leader. He asked Leah whether she wanted Adrian in his place. Leah looked at me, then at him. I spoke before she could. I said Peter had already agreed and was becoming nervous because the room was watching. Ethan returned before I could send him away again. He asked Leah whether she wanted the change. She said she had only learned about it minutes earlier and believed her father had requested it. Ethan told her there was still time to stop. I reminded both of them that every guest was seated and the photographer was ready. Cancelling after Adrian had been called to the floor would humiliate him. Leah said she did not want another argument attached to the wedding. I told her there would be no argument if Peter accepted the generous decision he had already made. That was how I kept rooms clean. I made refusal look dirtier than surrender. Peter asked me to tell her the truth. His voice stayed low. He offered one last clean way out. Change the cue. Let Adrian remain a guest. Let Leah choose without 2 adults using her wedding to settle an old argument. I told him he had allowed me to explain him for years because silence mattered more to him than being understood. That was true. He did not deny it. Then I said a man who needed 23 years of explanation did not deserve to control 4 minutes of music. Peter stepped toward Leah. I reached up and caught his ear between my fingers. It was something I had done as a joke at home when he ignored me. Here, under the warm lights, it was not a joke. I pulled his head sideways and told him to get out of my sight. I said he should let Adrian feel fatherhood for one song and stop making Leah's wedding about his pride. The photographer lowered her camera. Ethan stopped halfway across the floor. Mrs. Alvarez put one hand over her mouth. Leah's face hardened because 160 people had just turned toward us. She told Peter not to make the moment harder. She said he had already received the aisle and all the years. Adrian was getting one dance. Peter removed my hand from his ear. Not roughly. 1 finger at a time. His thumb tapped 4 slow beats against his leg. He told Leah he would stay until the last song because he was her father and would not punish her wedding. Then he looked at me and said he would not return home as my husband. I heard drama. I heard one more attempt to make me afraid of a consequence he would never carry through. I smoothed Leah's veil and signaled the DJ. The lights narrowed over the center of the floor. Adrian removed his jacket and walked toward Leah with one hand extended. His cheeks were red. His smile was wider than it should have been. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance and named Adrian Costa. The wrong name moved through the room like cold air. Leah looked at me. I nodded. She looked at Peter. He stood beside the old station clock with the ivory card folded in one hand. She crossed the floor. Adrian placed one hand at her waist and tried to lead. The first beat came. He stepped right. Leah stepped left. Their shoes touched. He laughed and leaned close, telling her the first steps were always awkward. She tried again. He turned her too quickly, and her left ankle bent enough to make her pull back. At the edge of the floor, Peter tapped 4 beats against his leg. 1, 2, 3, 4. Leah saw him. Adrian told her that her mother wanted her to understand what life might have looked like if Harriet had chosen the man who knew how to lead. He added that Harriet said Leah wanted to give him the fatherhood he should have had. Leah stopped moving. Adrian's smile weakened. He asked whether that was not what she wanted. She asked him what I had told him. He said I had promised Peter agreed and that the dance was her idea. Leah took her hand from his shoulder. She turned toward the DJ booth and ordered the music stopped. The song cut in the middle of a note. The bass vanished from under my shoes. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved to rescue the moment. I tried to signal the DJ to restart. He moved his hands away from the controls. The band leader closed the music folder in front of him. At the nearest table, Peter's older brother turned his chair so the empty seat beside him faced Peter, not me. Ethan's mother collected my place card from the family table and set it face down without a speech. Those actions were small. That was why they landed. I could argue with an accusation. I could not argue with a room that had stopped accepting my direction. Leah walked to the booth and asked who had changed the run sheet. The DJ looked at me before answering. He said the original form named Peter, and the change came from my phone at 7:58. I moved toward her. I said I had only adjusted the presentation because she was too stressed to see how meaningful it could be. Ethan stepped between us. He did not touch me. He simply turned his body toward Leah and gave her the space I had taken. Leah pulled the original ivory card from the pocket hidden inside her dress. I had not known she kept a second copy. She placed it on the DJ table. Her handwriting was still there. Father-daughter dance. Dad, no freestyling. She asked Peter whether he had requested a replacement. Peter said no. One word. That was all he needed, because my own schedule, my own message, and Adrian's answer were already in the room. Leah pressed her fingers to the ivory card. She told Peter she should have asked him herself. She did not say he had been perfect. She did not erase the years when his silence had let my version stand. She asked whether he would still dance with her. Peter asked whether she wanted her father or only wanted to repair the room. Leah looked at him and said she wanted her dad. Mrs. Alvarez cleared the path. Ethan went to Peter and walked beside him, not ahead of him. Guests lowered their phones. Adrian stepped off the floor, collected his jacket, and left through the arch without looking for me. The DJ restarted the slower version. Peter put one hand at Leah's back. 4 beats passed before they moved. Left. Together. Right. Turn. She stepped on his brown shoe and laughed through a face that was no longer arranged for photographs. Peter did not perform victory. He only held his daughter at the speed her ankle could manage. When the song ended, Leah hugged him. Then she returned to Ethan. She did not come to me. Peter stayed for the cake, the final photographs, and the last dance. He spoke to guests who approached him. He helped Ethan's father carry gifts to the car. He behaved exactly as he had promised, as Leah's father. At 11:43, he removed his boutonniere and placed it beside my purse. He said he had spent years believing his actions would speak loudly enough. They had not. That was his failure. Mine was using the silence to build whatever story served me. He said I had not given Adrian one dance. I had used our daughter to rehearse the family I wished I had chosen. Then he left in his inspection truck. 3 days later, Peter filed a petition for dissolution and proposed a temporary household expense agreement. He rented a small apartment near Leah's neighborhood, though she waited until after the honeymoon to visit him. We paid the remaining wedding bills exactly as planned, and he never used money to punish me. Leah reduced me to short messages while she began one honest phone call with Peter every Sunday. Adrian sent one note saying he had agreed to a dance, not to become a replacement father, and then stopped answering. At the university, I kept my title, but colleagues who had attended the wedding stopped asking me to manage their private family celebrations. I had spent years believing that the person who controlled the schedule controlled the meaning. I could move a name, shorten a speech, and direct every eye in the room. Peter did not fight me for the microphone. He left Leah enough quiet to ask one question, and the answer removed me from the family story I had tried to improve. The ivory card is in my desk now. My red change crosses Peter's name. Leah's black line crosses mine. At 8:47, my daughter chose her father, and my husband stopped choosing me.